Get that eyesore out of here! The sharp command cut through the quiet courtyard, making every neighbor glance up. At the center stood the HOA president, arms crossed, lips curled with disdain. Beside her, a black woman clutched a basket of flowers, her smile fading as whispers spread. She wasn't welcome. Not here. Not with them. But 7 minutes from now, the courtyard would fall silent for a very different reason. Have you ever been judged before they even knew your story? Tell us in the comments. Before we begin, hit subscribe. It's appreciated. It was a bright Saturday morning when Lena stepped onto the freshly swept walkway of her new neighborhood. The scent of cut grass mixed with the faint sweetness of the flowers she carried, a small gesture to make the bland porch feel like home. She had dreamed of this place, a quiet cul-de-sac where her husband could finally rest after years of service, and where they could start a new chapter away from the noise of the city. Her husband, Marcus, a retired veteran, was still inside unpacking boxes, his medals carefully tucked away for now. To the neighbors, they were simply newcomers, anonymous faces behind a moving truck. That suited Lena just fine. All she wanted was to plant the marigold she loved and let life settle. But as she knelt to arrange the flowers by the mailbox, a sudden shadow fell across the pavement. The sharp click of heels broke the morning calm. A woman in a crisp blazer, clipboard in hand, stood with a look that could cut through glass. Her presence carried the unspoken authority of someone used to getting her way. Lena smiled politely, but the woman's eyes traveled over her like she was an intruder, not a neighbor. There was no greeting, only a slow shake of the head and a narrowing gaze that made Lena's stomach tighten. Something about the silence felt heavier than words. From behind nearby curtains, blinds tilted just enough for curious eyes to watch. The warmth of the neighborhood faded, replaced by an icy tension Lena couldn't quite name. She straightened, her hands brushing dirt from her jeans, heart beginning to race though she didn't know why. What would you do if someone made it clear you didn't belong before you even had a chance to prove you did? Lena tried to shake off the unease, but the woman's stare lingered like a storm cloud. As the day stretched on, the quiet cul-de-sac no longer felt welcoming. Every time Lena stepped outside to water her flowers, to carry another box from the truck, she caught the flick of curtains and the weight of eyes on her back. By late afternoon, the woman returned, this time with 2 neighbors trailing behind her like silent witnesses. Clipboard in hand, she began listing violations. The flowers were not HOA approved. The mailbox paint was too dark. Even the welcome mat was not in compliance. Each accusation was sharp, delivered loud enough for others to hear. Lena's chest tightened. She explained calmly that they'd just moved in, that the flowers were temporary. But her words fell flat. The woman's tone grew colder, her smile sharper, as if every polite reply only fueled her need to assert control. When Marcus finally stepped outside, sweat on his brow from hours of unpacking, the whispers from behind windows turned to open stares. The woman's gaze locked on him, his broad shoulders, his dark skin, and her voice hardened. She demanded proof of ownership, suggesting maybe they were visiting or lost. Neighbors began to gather, some with crossed arms, others pretending to tidy their lawns while watching. Lena felt the humiliation burn through her. She tried to steady her breathing, but the air felt heavy, charged with something more than simple suspicion. The woman moved closer, lowering her voice just enough to sting. She warned that the HOA could issue fines or even take action if they refused to follow the rules. Her words dripped with condescension, a quiet threat dressed as neighborhood concern. Marcus stood still, jaw tight, eyes calm but unyielding. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. But Lena could feel the tension radiating from him, the same controlled stillness he carried from years of service. Then came the final insult. The woman suggested they might be renters who didn't understand how things worked here. The crowd behind her shifted, some hiding smirks, others exchanging uneasy glances. The humiliation was complete, at least for now, but the storm wasn't over. As the sun dipped lower and the murmurs of neighbors grew, something in Marcus's eyes changed. A quiet decision formed, a resolve that would soon turn this silent hostility into a moment no one on that street would ever forget. The air around them felt like it might snap. Neighbors hovered at the edges of their driveways, waiting for Marcus to react. But instead of anger, he moved with a steady calm that drew every eye. Without a word, he turned back into the house, leaving a hush in his wake. Lena stood frozen, heart pounding. The woman with the clipboard shifted, a flicker of uncertainty breaking her polished veneer. Murmurs rippled through the small crowd. Where was he going? Seconds later, Marcus returned. In his hands was a small, velvet-lined case, edges worn from years of careful handling. He set it on the hood of the car and opened it slowly, the metal inside catching the fading light. Rows of metals gleamed, bronze and silver, ribbons of deep red and navy. Proof of decades spent defending the very freedoms his neighbors enjoyed. The quiet deepened. Someone gasped. Another whispered, "Is that a silver star?" The HOA president's clipboard dipped slightly, her fingers trembling just enough to notice. Marcus looked up, eyes unwavering. "These," he said, voice low but strong, "are the rules I've followed. Service, honor, sacrifice, for every one of you standing here." No one spoke. The same neighbors who had peered from behind curtains now stared, faces flushed with something between shame and awe. The woman who had barked orders all afternoon opened her mouth, but no words came. Lena felt tears welling as the weight of the moment settled in. The humiliation they'd endured only minutes earlier now turned to a powerful silence, a silence that demanded reflection. What happens next, do you think? Will they apologize, or retreat into the comfort of their own walls? Tell us your thoughts below. The clipboard lowered all the way to her side, the sharp corners of authority suddenly meaningless. A few neighbors stepped back, their earlier curiosity replaced by quiet shame. Marcus didn't gloat. He simply closed the case, the soft click echoing in the still evening air. Lena reached for his hand, her own trembling from the release of tension. The woman who had started it all cleared her throat, words faltering as she muttered something about not knowing, before retreating toward her porch. One by one, the onlookers drifted away, their faces carrying the weight of what they'd just witnessed. Inside their new home, the silence felt different, no longer heavy with suspicion, but with a hard-won dignity. Marcus placed the metal case on a shelf by the door, not as a boast, but as a quiet reminder of everything they had endured. The next morning, a single bouquet of fresh flowers appeared on their porch. No note, no name, just a silent gesture of acknowledgement. Perhaps a neighbor's small way of saying, "We were wrong." Lena knew this wasn't the end of racism, not for them or for anyone. But in that moment, their story had pierced a wall of ignorance. A single evening had forced an entire street to see the humanity they'd overlooked. How many times must a person prove their worth to be treated with basic respect? And why should anyone have to? Show some love with a like and subscribe to stay inspired.